guys, I am Michaela Dice. I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us here on my podcast, Because You Belong Here. The purpose of this podcast is to talk about testimonies. I am a firm believer that your testimony should be someone else's prophecy. So we will be talking with some of my friends and family and people that I love about things that God has done in their lives, and I will be sharing different things about things that God has spoken to my heart and things that I've experienced through Him and His Word. And so I just wanted to tell you, grab a cup of coffee, pull up a chair, and come hang out with us as we go deep, discovering the ways that God has proven His love in tangible ways. I am so excited you're here.
All right, guys, I am back and I am here with my new friend Raj, and we are going to talk about a little bit of a different side of adoption today. We're going to be talking about kinship adoption. So if you've ever had questions about what that looks like or how to serve people who are in that space, we're going to have some conversations that hopefully will shed some light on what that is, and just so that even if you have been in this space, that you know you're not alone in the kinship adoption world, because it is a little bit different than the conversations we've had here before, or even the conversations that I could have with people from my experience. So I'm really excited to have you here, Raj. Thank you so much for your willingness to share some of your story.
Thank you for having me.
And if you'd like to just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your story, and we'll just talk.
Yeah, so my name is Raj, and I adopted my brother at the tender age of 19. Yes. Yeah, I was young, and it really, at the young age, it really felt, and I know people probably are like, yeah, right, you're 19, you don't really know. But I really felt as if the Lord really, he literally guided me through that whole entire process. Because the way it happened, I can honestly say it was nothing but Him. Looking back now, in the throes at 19, you're just like, you're going through it. You're 19, you're ambitious, and who cares? The world is your oyster. So you go with it, no ambitions or no anything that's inhibiting you. You just go because that's what you do at 19. But yeah, my mother has 4 children, and during the time of my adopting my brother, I had gotten guardianship of my 16-year-old sister, because my mother was, she's in recovery now, but at that time she was struggling with a drug addiction. And so my little brother, I have a brother who is 16 years younger than me. He was living with his dad. His dad had him. And so I had my 16-year-old sister. Her and her father had got into, teenagers, and they just could not get along because she was a teenager at that time. So the court was like, you know what, they gave me guardianship over her. And then my mom found out that she was pregnant with my brother, and some things transpired, and he ended up in foster care, and the state, made the decision to terminate her rights. And I was like, I want to adopt him. That process was very, at that time, it really, honestly, transparently, it took a toll on me at 19. I was in college. My sister had just had a baby, so I was helping her with her baby. And yeah, it was,
16.
Yeah, she got pregnant at 17.
Okay.
And so she had my little niece at like 18. And so, we're young. Me and my sister are only 3 years apart. So I was trying to help her the best way I could. And seeing that my little brother was in need and in foster care, and I was just like, Lord, I remember praying this prayer, Lord, if my little brother gets adopted out, I know it will change the dynamic of our family. And I will not be able to talk. I would not have a relationship with my mom. Like, I knew that in my heart of hearts, that if he got separated from us, then I knew that our relationship would be non-existent.
Yeah.
And something, and like, I remember one day my mom was pregnant we were driving, And she was like, I'm just too old to be having another baby. She was like, just in jokingly, she's like, this is going to be your baby. Like she jokingly said that. And who would have thought the Lord was like, no, this is going to be your baby.
Yeah.
We had, I remember she had left him with me and went to go do what she did, and that wasn't something odd that she did. She did that with all of, with the rest of my siblings. So it wasn't anything that I didn't think anything about it, but the way she had did it, someone called the Department of Family Services and they came and they picked my brother up while he was in my care, and he ended up being in foster care for a year and a half.
Oh man.
Yeah, he ended up being in foster care a year and a half before I actually adopted him. And during that process, I would go visit him like every Tuesday and Thursday. I would be, me and my sister would go up there and visit him to have our weekly visits. Like I remember when he first got placed into foster care, the first foster family that he was placed in, it wasn't a good
We're cutting out.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
You're a little frozen. Hold on one second.
Okay.
No, you're good. I just wanted to rewind just a little bit. My internet is being really sketchy since the storm, like since the hurricanes. We live in South Carolina.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
our internet has just been kind of spotty since Helene came through, and sometimes it
Yeah.
works, and then other times it's like, hey, we're not working today. So I think we're good. Okay, so rewind back to you remember when, and then it cut off.
Okay. So where was I? Okay. So I remember when they first took him, they placed him in foster care, and, the process of getting visitation. And so we went through that, and I went and I was visiting him every week. And like his first foster family that he went to was not a good fit for him. He was a little bitty baby, and I could just tell something was wrong. And so I made a big fuss. Like at 19, I was like, oh no, this is not going to work for him. And I remember just like doing those little bitty things. And I would go to every court date, and I was there, and I had no intention on fighting I had no intention on adopting him. It was just my little brother, and I wanted to be involved. And when the state of Texas DPS made the decision to terminate parental rights for my mother, they came and they were like, hey, we're going to terminate her parental rights. And I was like, okay. And they were like, well, we found a family for him. We did all these things. And his second foster mom, we had gotten really close. Like she I love that woman to this day. Like she would always like cheer me up, like encourage me. And she was like, why don't you adopt him? And I was like, I don't know if I could or not. And then the state came and they were like, would you like to adopt him? And I was like, I thought about it, and I was like, and I went and I talked to my mom about it, and she was like, yeah, she was like, I think you should do that. And so I went through the process, and in this story, the way it turned out, like it is nothing but God. Like I went through the whole process. Like they paid for me to do like the parenting class, like the state of Texas paid for me to do the parenting classes, like all the things that it takes to adopt a child.
Yeah.
And, the night before we were going to terminate the parental rights and recommendation for adoption and go through the process, my little brother's caseworker told me that CPS had decided that they were not going to allow me to adopt him, that they had found a family in Louisiana that was going to adopt him out, and that was going to be the recommendation that they recommended.
Oh my gosh.
And so I went to court the next day, and during court, they tried to recommend that I could not appeal the decision. And when I say the Lord is at hand, he's at hand. The judge was like, I am not going to grant your decision to not allow her to appeal because she's been in this courtroom every single case. And it shows that she has been to every single visit. She was like, I'm going to grant you the decision to not allow her to adopt, but I'm not going to grant you the decision to not allow her to appeal the decision. And in that moment, when she granted, I was frustrated. I was panicking. I didn't know what to do. And I went and they made the decision to adopt him out. And he was going to leave, like, he was supposed to leave like 3 days after. Like, we went to go to our last visit and we went to go, do our last farewell. And I was like, I need an attorney. Like, I need to find an attorney to help me appeal this decision. So I went and I found an attorney. He wasn't even a family law attorney. He was like a criminal attorney that my dad had used in the past. And he was really good. And that's all I knew. And I told him my story and he took on my case.
Wow.
He took on my case like that day. And not only did he take in my case, my mother's attorney was beside him, and my little brother's biological father's attorney just so happened to be in the back of the courtroom doing some random something and agreed to co-chair with him as well. So it was him. I only had to pay for him, but the Lord, he just worked it out where 2 family law attorneys were sitting co-chair with the attorney that I hired. And they were like, we admire this young lady. She's 19 and she's fighting for her brother. So we want to do everything we can to help you assist her.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So were you already walking with the Lord at this point?
Not like a teenager, my relationship was not as mature, but I was like, I prayed and I did all those things and I was praying and I always walked with the Lord. How I found the Lord is very unique. I didn't find him in church. I found him because I used to get bullied at school and my mom didn't know anything else to do but give me the Bible. That's the only thing she knew to do. And so I found the Lord literally reading his word.
That's amazing.
And so like I was walking with him, but I also, at the time I was still hurting because our family dynamic was different. And so I wasn't like full throttled like I am now. Like I wasn't consistently in church. But I knew enough to pray. Like I always kept a prayer life. Like I always prayed and I always read my word. So I was doing those 2 things. And, I had been praying and I was just going through a lot and I was just like, Lord, I don't know if I can do this. I don't think I can do this. This is taxing. Like I went through all of these things. I went through all the jumping the hurdles, going to these millions of hours of parenting classes. And, because I was younger, like, I think they low key, like, I think they added a little extra because I was young and I just really didn't, you know what I mean? Like I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And
so they gave you some extra advice, extra education.
Yeah, I was like going through, but in hindsight, the Lord was making a way for me to do what it is that he had called me to do, which was to adopt my little brother. Because had it not happened that way, I would have had to come out of pocket for the home, the home visit test, the home visiting that
home studies,
the drug test that they do, the parenting classes that they do. And I did not have to do that. The state of Texas did that. They paid for that, even though they decided at the last minute that I wasn't going to get my brother. Well, the only thing that I had to do literally was go to court and fight.
Yeah.
I did not have to wait for a home study. I did not have to wait for any of those things. And they were a little miffed that I appealed the case. And what got them, they didn't do it right in the first place. They didn't do his placement correctly in the first place, because I don't know how it is in other states, but in the state of Texas, whenever a child is removed from the home, they must make every reasonable effort to place
Mhm.
them with a family member.
Yeah.
And the judge that I went to go appeal with, he was like, "How is it that you approved guardianship for her 16-year-old sister, but you did not place her brother in her care? You
Yeah.
guys were negligent in doing your due diligence."
Wow.
Yeah.
I really love that adopting through foster care can look like that, because that's how it was for both of our first adoptions. The state, we lived in Arizona at the time, and the state paid for our home study. They paid for all of the things. I think for both of them separately, like I think for each of them, we ended up spending maybe $300. And that was
Hmm.
for the attorney for like the final things and for their birth certificates.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah, the state, they will pay for it,
Mhm.
especially if that's what they're recommending, that the parental rights be terminated and they go into adoption through kinship
Mhm.
care. They will pay for it. They will work with you. They will work with you and they'll do all of those things. I think their thing with me was that I was young. I was 19, you know what I mean? And
Okay.
so they're kind of like, how is it that she's 19 and she's going to be able to adopt this 2-year-old? And so, and they also was like that, because Kendra, he was my brother, and my mom was, that's my mom. And just like, they were like, well, their thing was like, well, you can't have no contact with my mom. And I told my lawyer, that's crazy. First of all, she doesn't live with me. She's not in the house with me. I was like, so for you to be able to say that I can never talk to my mom again, that one, I think that is very insane. And
Yeah.
so that was what they wanted to do. And I wouldn't agree to not ever contacting my mom again. And that was their whole justification. And that's what they were telling the judge. And the judge was like, in so many words, do you hear yourself? You want her to say that she would never talk to her mom again. And he was like, well, young lady, does your mom live with me? I was like, no, sir, I stay on family housing. I stay in family housing on campus. And so he looked at them and they were like, and they couldn't say anything. They were just like, and he was like, no. And they were, because I had plans to go to school to be a lawyer anyway. Like I was really, and that was another thing. They were like, well, she plans on going to law school. How can she take care of, a child? And they were like, and he was like, any person that has the fortitude to hire an attorney and to appeal your decision, I don't have a doubt that she's going to be able to take care of a child and go to law school.
What an amazing judge you had.
Yeah, I tell you, it
What
was
a blessing.
nothing but the Lord. It was nothing but him. Like he
Mhm.
orchestrated everything, because even he was just like, and he told me, he was like, young lady, I don't want you to ever allow another person's perspective or another person's view of what your life is like now. I don't want you to ever to allow them to dictate what your life will be.
Yeah.
He was like, people are going to tell you that you can't do a lot of things. And he was like, I have never and he said, I have been sitting on this bench for as long as you have been alive. I have never seen any person fight so hard for their sibling. He was like, that's rare. He was like, and I want you to continue to have that fight in you. And he was like, and don't let anybody tell you anything different.
That's great.
Yeah. So our adoption process was up and down.
So, what did that look like for anybody who might be curious on how to start that process? Whenever they started the process to terminate your mom's parental rights, what was your next step to start the process of getting ready for the home studies and everything to be approved for your brother to come live with you?
Hey guys, I just wanted to real quick take this moment to let you know about scripture journals that I've been writing. I will include the links in the show notes for them, but I love to study scripture one at a time and in depth. So I have included spaces to write it in different translations, and then at the bottom of each page there is a box for you to use the Strong's Concordance or maybe the Blue Letter Bible app to study the in-depth original meanings for the words in the scriptures. And then there are questions that I put a lot of thought into for the practical application of each scripture. So I hope that you are able to gain a better understanding of different scriptures and how to apply them and how to make them meaningful in your own life. And like I said, I'm including the links in the show notes, or you can search for my name on Amazon.
So the next step was me and his caseworker went into the room, and she explained to me that I had to do parenting classes, I had to pass a home study, and I had to do, and whatever else that they decide you need. And I think for each case, it's different. And considering how it was family and our dynamic, I went to some counseling. I went to a couple of counseling, and then I went to I had to take a couple of drug tests, UAs, because of, my mom and what was going on. And the home study really basically depends on the law, like the laws in your state. Like, it has to be the square footage. So me and my brother were on campus designated for family housing. And so my sister had it was like a trailer. So it was like a double wide trailer. So my sister, it was like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath trailer. And so I had to prove that, his space would be sufficient for him. So him and my little niece shared a room, which was legal because because of their age. They were under the age of like 10, I want to say. So boys and girls, over the age of 10, it gets weird, but under the age of 10, they're like, okay. So I had to prove that he had a bed, like I could provide food and clothes, just the normal things. And then I had a parenting person actually come to my dorm because I was like, I'm a college student. I can't flunk out of school. The times you guys have available, I can't miss class. And so the parenting guy agreed to come to my dorm, which was honestly, it was good for both me and my sister, because my sister was a young parent and she just sat in there with us and was like listening and was like,
That's awesome.
So we were both young. So it was, he came and he just really talked about, just different parenting methods, like, that you do have to discipline children, and the correct way, like, to discipline, the incorrect way to discipline. I think our parenting classes were appropriate for our age, because at the time I was 19 and my sister was like 17, 18. And so, there's just, the topics are different. And in therapy, I got to choose the therapist I wanted to go to, and I ended up just going to the one on my campus for free because I just didn't want to pay for that. And we talked about that, and they signed off that I had attended all the parenting classes, that all of my UAs came back clean, and that I had a job, and that I was financially able to take care of him, and that I wouldn't have to do so on like welfare. That was one of the another concern. And I ended up, having tons of scholarships, just because I had got scholarships from college, from just being in college. And so my scholarships and me working on campus and I had another little job, a part-time job off campus. And so that helped out our income. And oddly enough, they used me and my sister's income together because they counted us as one household. So that made the income requirements a lot easier. The thing I will say, though, is if you are doing kinship adoption, I would really make sure that that people are involved. especially if it's a close kin, like a aunt and or a brother or a sister. Just make sure you're actively involved and you genuinely are paying attention to what's going on. Because sometimes the verbiage can be so overwhelming and you're just like, what? Don't be afraid to stop and ask for clarification. And don't be afraid to have boundaries and set and be like, no, we're not going to do that. This is what we're going to do. And we feel it's going to be in the best interest of our kid. Because, it's at the end of the day, it's still an agency and they still have to look out for, they are supposed to look out for the best interest of the child, but it's still an agency. And so you have to know that when they get out of this situation, that your entire family is not wrecked. And I think you got to pay it. You got to kind of be mindful of that as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So does the home study process looks like this, is it the same as like foster care? Like you just went through the foster care system, or is
Yeah,
it?
I went through the foster care because I had to do the same thing with my little sister. So it was just the same foster care home study. It was a little more lenient because he was not going, like they didn't like I didn't have to let them know when I was going out of town. I didn't have to, like
Oh, that
those
makes
were a
sense.
little bit different. Like, even with my sister, I didn't have to let them know, hey, I'm going out of town, blah, 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 because it was my sister. And
Yeah.
so it's a little bit, and I know in Texas it was just a little bit different as far as like certain things like that.
Mhm. Okay, that makes sense. Um, how old was your brother whenever you met your husband?
My brother was two. And let me
Oh,
tell you
so
how
he had just moved in with you.
yeah, he had just moved in with me and my husband. We were talking on, like, me and my husband had a long distance relationship. So for a while. So I tell everybody that year was a whirlwind. I adopted my brother, and that 2 years actually. I adopted my brother that October before. I met my husband in December. So I adopted my brother in October. My husband and I met in December. We were talking long distance. May, I graduated college. August, I moved from one side of Texas to another side of Texas. And December, I got married.
Wow. So like a year and 3 months.
Yes.
Okay.
And so my brother, like my son, I call him my son, like he has not known anyone else besides my husband. So, but
Mhm.
I adopted my brother before my husband and I were a thing.
Yeah. Okay. So how did you meet your husband?
My best friend. So my best friend and her husband were okay. My husband and my best friend's ex-husband, they were best friends. And
Okay.
me and my best friend, we've been friends since I was 17. And so she just told, like, my husband asked her, "Do you have any friends that I can talk to?" And my best friend was like, "I have somebody for you." And she was like, "But I'm going to tell you, she's been through a lot and she needs somebody that she can just relax with, that she does not have to hold everybody up, because she holds her entire family up and she doesn't need a relationship that she's going to have to be that person to hold the whole family up. So if that's not you, you can move around."
What a great friend.
Yes.
That's amazing. Has he been all of those things for you?
Oh my gosh. I know that he was sent from the Lord. Like, I tell my best friend this all the time. I was like, my husband and his family has been so I tell her, I was like, for me, my hometown was Lodabar. It was Lodabar to me. I
Yeah.
was like, and my husband and where I moved to has been rest. I feel like the Lord placed me and my husband and my son. He placed us in this amazing family for us to be able to heal and rest and genuinely be able to just be able not to live on survival mode for the rest of our lives. Like
Yeah.
I just, I tell my friends all the time, like I remember as a child praying that like, Lord, I just want to break this cycle of drug abuse and poverty and
Mhm.
just this horrible, horrible stronghold that's been on my family forever. Like I remember that's been a prayer since I was a little girl. And the Lord placed me with an amazing family. Like my husband, both sides of his family, when I say they are believers, like they are believers. And like I had never witnessed what successful marriage looked like until like my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, they've been married for over 40 years. His grandparents were married 75 years on both sides before they passed away. Like almost everyone in his family have been married at least, even including us, 15 years, if not more. So,
Yeah.
biblical marriage, biblical principles, biblical values are ingrained in his family. And I genuinely feel like the Lord has just he worked everything out. And he answered a prayer that had been a prayer since I was a little bitty girl. And
Yeah.
as an adult, I see it now, and it just took, you have to go through some valleys sometimes. You got to go through the valley. He walks you through the valley so that he can restore your soul, and that and he will lead you to righteousness for his name's sake. And I feel like, and I know that's what he's done with me and my son. Like, I know that.
Hmm. I love that so much of your story is so much of his redemption.
Yes.
Like in the fact that you have an amazing marriage and your husband comes from a place of legacy in that department. Like,
Yeah. And a
how
legacy of
sweet is the
knowing
Lord?
the Lord, like genuinely been like and that was my thing. Like and my best friend had told him that as well. She was like, Raj is not going to date you if you don't know the Lord. If you don't know, like, and she's like, you don't have to be like uppity, because her walk ain't like that. But if you don't know who the Lord is,
Hmm.
she was like, she's not going to date you, because she's been through some things. And I have been through things that honestly I've had to fall on my knees and pray and ask God to really walk with me through this, because I'm not going to make it. And so
Yeah.
I cannot see myself with someone who does not know who the Lord is at all.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So how have you seen the adoption of your brother? And how long was your sister with you? With her
She was
baby?
with me when she was like 16. So when she turned 16, she moved in with me.
Okay. And how long would and then she had a baby when she was 18, you said?
Yeah, she had her baby. So about 2 years before, about 2 years.
And then was she still with you whenever you married your husband? Like, did she move across the state with you?
No, she ended up getting a scholarship to go to Texas Tech. And I ended up having to take my niece later down the road for a few years because of, a CPS situation with my sister. I ended up having to get my niece for a couple of years, but now it's all good. But
Oh, good.
yeah, so she ended up going to Lubbock. Like she started at the same school that I went to, because I went to UT Permian Basin, and so they had family housing. And so she started her freshman year at UTPB, and then she ended up getting a scholarship. And when you age out of foster care, the state of Texas pays for your 4-year degree. They pay for it for you. So she
Okay.
ended up going, to Texas Tech and going to Lubbock. And when she was in Lubbock and I saw that she was settled, I made the move. Like I moved to East Texas.
Okay. Is that where you still live?
Yes, I still live in East Texas.
Okay, so how has the process of adoption with your brother and I guess having your niece for a while, how do you feel like that affected your marriage? Like strengthened or struggled, like those kinds of things? What do you think?
All right, guys, tune in next week for the way that Raj answers this question about her marriage and kinship adoption. But we talk about so much more about what the Lord did and how the Lord has worked and is continuing to work in her life. It was just so much that I wanted to split it into two different parts just because I want you to be able to chew on each different part separately. But we're really excited to have you here, and I can't wait for you to hear the rest of this beautiful conversation with my new friend Raj.
Like how did that
Um,
contribute?